Well, here's a free piece of advice. Listen to a guy who knows how to use a shotgun. And now Phil Robertson isn't just blasting the feathers of anything that quacks. He's blasting the secular ideas that he thinks are ruining America.
In 1966, Time magazine asked, "Is God dead?" Since then, basic beliefs in marriage, gender identity, and the value of life have been shaken to the core. Phil Robertson is a best-selling author and the founder of the Duck Commander Company. He says the bad news in our country is really bad. But in his book, The Theft of America's Soul, Phil says the good news is really good. He blows the lid off the lies that are destroying America and offers 10 truths that could turn our nation around.
Well, the show was called Duck Dynasty. It had a huge audience, and the family of people with beards and ducks and everything down in Louisiana is back on the air. And Phil Robertson, who's the patriarch of that clan, and his lovely wife, Kay, are with us now. I'm so glad to see you both. I'm honored to be here. Hey, Phil, let me ask you, you lived a pretty rough life. You played for LSU. You were halfback on the...
Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
Louisiana Tech.
Oh, Louisiana, not LSU, Louisiana Tech. You played halfback. You were good. You were
quarterback.
You were quarterback.
I was the quarterback right ahead of Terry Bradshaw.
Oh, okay.
He was second string, and I told him, I said, I think I'm going to go chase ducks instead of play football. I said, Bradshaw, I just really don't see a good ending with a livelihood that involves large, violent men chasing you. I said,
large, violent men chasing.
So Bradshaw went on to the professional football world, and I went after the Ducks.
Well, you had a duck call. How'd you come up with that thing?
It's like playing music by ear.
Yeah.
You hear these birds, and God made an array of ducks.
Okay.
Well, they all have different sounds.
All right.
Some of them just peep, and some of them quack.
All right.
So I figured out, listening to them, how to build devices that sounded like each species. So once I got that going and on the market, it didn't start out fast. My first year sales, Pat, were $8,000. We sold $8,000 worth. I said, Miss Kay, we are rolling.
Yeah,
and tell me what I said.
Yeah.
She said, we're going to starve to death.
Yeah.
I did.
Well, you lived a pretty rough life. You were a bouncer. You beat somebody up in a bar. What'd you do?
Yeah, I lived through that, too.
I was a heathen.
You were?
And I didn't find out about Jesus, investigate him. I do have 2 degrees from Louisiana Tech. But, Pat, in an 8-year period, earning those degrees, I never heard anyone say one kind word about Jesus. Not one.
Yeah.
So I guess I came out of there, at best, an agnostic. But I don't even think I was a believer at all.
Well, you know.
I investigated Jesus at 28 years old, and I thought, wait a minute here. We're talking life and immortality here.
That's right.
So that's what got my attention.
Who found him first?
Huh?
Who found Jesus?
Miss Kay found Jesus first.
What
year ahead of him.
How come you found him?
Well, I got that place where there was no hope with the marriage. I just thought, what can I do? I'm trying to be the best wife, be the best mother. I tried to make everything right, and he just kept messing it all up.
What did he do?
Mike got drunk and, just lived like a heathen. So, I mean, I guess one night I came in and I was just at the bottom. I really wanted to just go to sleep and not wake up. And what saved me, you'll love this, is my oldest son was about 8 or 9, I can't remember. And him and the other boys were outside the bathroom when I was crying in the bathroom, thinking, I just don't know what to do. I don't have any hope.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted, was to be a good wife and mother. That was my goal in life. And I felt like I just failed. So Alan said, Mama, don't cry anymore. God's going to help us.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little child from the Can you believe that? Yeah. And he said now, since he was a preacher for 25 years, he said that was my first sermon, and my mom responded.
So he's still preaching.
Pat, my woman tells me now, she says, Phil, and I mentioned this earlier when we were on Facebook, she said, I've been poor with you, and you were mean. Yeah. She said, now I'm rich with you, and you're very kind. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah.
So he's kind now. He's changed.
He's very kind. He waits on me when I got sick. He took care of me. I mean, he didn't even bat an eye. He brought me a tray of food every day. I mean, he took care of me for the whole time, like 3 months that I was sick.
Isn't that beautiful?
I learned it all from the Almighty.
Yes, you did. Well, you know, you all had a tremendous experience. So this TV show, how did that come about? It was so popular. It just exploded all across America.
They came down from New York, and someone came up with a wild idea. Somebody stood up in the back at one of those skull sessions they were having, those producers for A&E, and someone said, I know this is a far-fetched idea, but why don't we maybe have a functional family on television?
Yeah.
And someone else said, you know, Dave, that's a wild idea, but where would you find one? Yeah. So they came all the way down to Louisiana, down on the riverbank, and for a godly group, family group, and they said, let's give it a try. After they pitched the idea and left, my sons, 4 sons and their wives, they said, Dad, what do you think? I said, a bunch of rednecks shooting ducks. I said, I just don't think that's going to work in America. Yeah. I said, however, I said, what if God's behind it? I said, it'll go ballistic.
Yeah.
Well, as it turned out, I said, why don't we just see? So we started the show, and from that, Pat, thousands and thousands have been converted to Christ via that TV show.
Well, it's been so wonderful. When people just lived with your family, they loved you both, all your children, and it was amazing.
People are still coming down and visiting us. Yeah. We give them the gospel. Jesus
and a lot of good food.
Yeah. What kind of food do you concentrate on these days?
Well, I do 2 or 3 types. I do the country meals, which is like chicken and dumplings, or fried chicken, or things that were, you associate with the South. And I do a lot of those meals. Or sometimes they want Cajun food. So we get it all the way from the Gulf. I've got somebody that goes down and gets it at a market there. And we cook shrimp and crawfish and all that. We make that really good. He makes gumbos, and we make all that. And then the next choice would be just steak. And sometimes he cooks a whole ribeye on a grill. Wow. So we have that. So we have 3 different choices.
And you have your families all together. I mean, it's really nice that people all eat together. That's
right.
And for all the naysayers who say, oh, you shouldn't eat meat, I'm like, I have Acts chapter 10 where the big sheet was let down out of heaven for Peter to see.
That's right.
Let's see, 4-footed animals, that'd be your deer, moose, elk, buffalo. And it also contained birds of the air, which are your ducks. Yeah. And then the creatures that move along the ground, and the voice from headquarters says, arise, Peter, kill and eat. So, Pat, we got orders from headquarters. If it walks, crawls, flies, or swims, whack them and stack them.
Let me talk about this book. Phil, your knowledge of the Bible, I must say, is encyclopedic. This is the theft of America's soul. How'd you learn the Bible? I mean, you've got scripture from the Psalms in here that's unbelievable.
He's memorized so much you wouldn't believe.
Have you really?
I looked at the text.
Yeah, he has. He won't admit it.
And as I read them, one thing stood out. It was what the Hebrew writer said in Hebrews 5. He said, solid food, these scriptures, we ingest them through our ears. That goes into our heart. Solid food is for the mature who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil.
Right.
Well, really, that's the basis of my life. When I ran up on Jesus, I just couldn't get enough of it because I was thinking, how in the world did I miss this? And I need to be more productive in sharing my faith and reaching out to my fellow man. So that's what the book's all about.
What do you see? You said the theft of America's soul. What do you think's happened to America?
I would simply look back at what the Apostle Paul told the church at Rome. Roman Empire at its heyday, a vast superpower of that day. The Apostle Paul said, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. Then he has this list. They become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, depravity. They're full of envy. Listen to this, murder. You're like, the Roman Empire was full of murder. Well, if you look at what the Roman Empire were doing and you fast forward 2,000 years, they're gossips, slanderers, God haters, insolent, arrogant, boastful. I'm quoting here.
That's right.
And he says, they invent ways of doing evil.
Yeah.
They're senseless, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. They'll rip their children out of their wombs and sell their body parts. You're like, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah.
That's your son, your daughter.
Yeah.
So reading those texts, I said, I at least need to remind America, none of those sins has changed in the last 2,000 years since Paul addressed the Roman Empire. They're all the same, Pat. They're still the same. So unless America repents of this evil that they are involved in right now, you're not going to believe what this thing is going to look like in another 20, 30 years.
What do you think's coming?
I think the wrath of God is coming. That's what I think.
You do? You go along with that too? You believe it?
Yeah, I think it's so sad. See, I was raised by my grandmother, but I lived with her half the time. And she was always teaching me in just a simple, common way, you know? I mean, we'd be shelling peas, and she would just be talking to me about the Bible and about being good. And it is far more important, the inside of you, than the outside. And all those lessons, she just did it day by day by day. And I had such a rock there. Now, my mother was an alcoholic, and they worked all the time. My mom and dad, they had a grocery store. But I just saw such goodness in her, and she didn't just say it, she did it. She took food to people. She took flowers to people. You know, she was always serving, too. She put it in action. And yet she only went to school till she was 13. But she was, you know, I learned that. And that's why I never had any trouble, because she taught to love all people, no matter what color or anything like that. So I was so different from a lot of the people back in the, 40s, 50s, you know, when I was being raised. But, yeah, I think that I just see they just don't want to talk about God, and they want to live their own life and just so selfish and self-centered.
You know, we've aborted about 60 million unborn babies, and you're exactly right, talking about selling body parts. And you know, that governor of Virginia said, well, if a little child is born a little bit deformed, we'll keep him comfortable till we decide, you know, how to kill him. I mean, that was pretty shocking stuff.
Yeah. Their feet are swift to shed innocent blood.
That's right. Swift to shed innocent blood.
And there is no fear of God in their eyes. They say, we've done nothing wrong. Listen to this, Pat.
Go ahead.
Here's a scary read. Mark this. Paul is talking to Timothy. Mark this down.
Yeah.
There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, if you kill your own offspring, Pat, there's not an ounce of love in you.
There's something wrong, isn't it?
These, without love, unforgiving, I mean, we don't even forgive. They came to Jesus and said, how many times do we forgive somebody, Lord?
7
when they
times
sin against us? 7. He said 70 times 7.
That's right.
We won't even forgive anyone once.
That's right.
Unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, all the drug. Our own nephew, my sister's boy, Pat got hooked up on these opioids.
Right.
My nephew hanged himself in his jail cell.
Oh, Phil.
52 years
My
old.
own nephew,
Horrible.
college graduate, LSU, CPA, had a wonderful job, lost it all, including his life, and hanged himself with his own shirt in a jail cell. So when you read about this, lovers of pleasure, conceited, rash, treacherous, lovers, not lovers of the good and not lovers of God. So when you read that text, 2 Timothy chapter 3, that's where the book came from. I just was reading these texts and I said, you know, I at least need to help my fellow man and remind them of these things.
I think it's magnificent. It's called The Theft of America's Soul, Phil Robertson, and it's available wherever books are sold. And it's blowing the lid off the lies that are destroying our country. And it's available. And I hope it's a bestseller. I'm sure it won't be.
You know what is? Tell them what your goal is.
What's it?
To tell them to love God. You know, the one you say. This is his goal.
I always remind them, hey, America, what's the downside? What is the downside of loving God and loving each other? I just, for the life of me, do not see the downside, Pat.
It's not. But
how hard could it be?
That's his
there's
motto.
plenty of downside on the other, though, Phil.
I guarantee you it is.
God bless you both. You all are terrific. And folks, you know, appreciate these people. And if you ever watched Duck Dynasty, it was a smashing show and won the awards time after time. This family down in Louisiana, the Duck Dynasty.